the idea of purpose and meaning making, especially in a time of great uncertainty. And this is something that I've been talking about a lot over the last couple months. And I've I've talked to all sorts of different groups of people at all sorts of different waves of this pandemic, of the financial uncertainty, of racial concerns and social movements. And so 2020 is turning out to be quite a year and quite a time of uncertainty that can actually ask us some pretty deep questions about what matters most in our life, why it matters, and then how to make it happen. And I wanted to sort of begin with the idea that for those of you out there who are listening, who are like, wait, seriously, there's a pandemic going on and you want me to think about my life purpose? That seems a little bit overwhelming. I hear you. One of the things that has bugged me sort of back in March and April was that I was seeing all these posts on social media saying the pandemic is the perfect time to take a breather and to think about deeper things, to sort of step off the treadmill of life for a bit and think about your values and think about what really matters to you. That's awesome, as long as you're not one of the many first responders, people who are considered essential workers, parents of young children, all of those who are in caregiving and other roles who are in fact actually taxed more during the pandemic. So this is a really uncertain time for a lot of people and not a time of relaxation. However, social media was telling me that Isaac Newton did his best work during a pandemic. So what's our problem? Social media was also telling us that this would be a great time to lose weight and get fit with a 14-day quarantine workout plan. And also that Shakespeare did some pretty genius work during a previous pandemic. So, from the beginning, there was this idea that the bar was set pretty high and that we really needed to ask these big, deep questions. I wanted everybody to hold up a second and to take a deep breath. Now, this was back in March and April when it was all really new. And then as I was preparing for my talk with you guys tonight, I was thinking, well, gosh, aren't we finished with it? Isn't the quarantine over, But no, it really isn't. And in the last couple days, we've seen numbers rising. We have seen increasing concerns about the pandemic and realizing that we're actually in this for the long haul. So thinking about this time as uncertain, but also as a time of opportunity, as my very perky friends would say, a crisis-tunity, is something that can be useful for us. So what I wanted to talk about tonight was that sometimes in life we are pushed by pain to make changes, and other times we are pulled by possibilities. So sometimes we're pushed by pain, meaning something bad happens to us. There's a crisis, there's a pandemic, there is unrest. How do we respond to that pain in a way to make positive changes? Other times we are pulled by possibilities, meaning that there are great opportunities out there for us. There are new things that we want to explore. We want to upend our current circumstances because we want to do something exciting and new. Either way, in this time, I think we should think about the search for pandemic purpose. And we want to ask a couple core questions, which is what's going on here? And what I mean is not just in society, but within you. What are the questions that are coming up within you? And what does purpose mean to you right now? And what can you do today? Not like in life in general, but today as a small step to live more purposefully. So I'm going to try to answer those three questions with lots of research and good examples. So my background is that I teach at UW in the School of Human Ecology. I teach classes on happiness and well-being. I teach a class called Consuming Happiness, about how we try to buy happiness successfully and unsuccessfully in the market economy. And I also was part of teaching and developing a class called Eco-U, Belonging, Purpose, and the Ecology of Human Happiness. And so what I'm really passionate about is explaining the concept of purpose, what it means in like real life terms, and helping people by translating academic research into translatable stuff that we can all use in our everyday lives. So my motto comes from Seneca. And the quote from Seneca is, "Not for school, but for life we learn." My children roll their eyes when I say this to them because they know it always means more homework. But what I mean when I say not for school, but for life we learn, is that for my students, it's not about learning for the test. It's really about learning things that I hope will be building blocks for a happy and thriving life of meaning. And so so those are sort of the ideas behind what I want to talk about today. I teach in the School of Human Ecology at UW-Madison, and human ecology is one of those fabulous topics that most people just don't know about. There aren't that many schools that have a School of Human Ecology, and so I wanted to define what the human ecological perspective is. So human ecology is a kind of multidisciplinary study of how we as humans interact with the natural, built, and social environments around us. And it's the study of all of the interrelationships between people and animals, the environment, our built objects, our social created norms and values. And human ecology really is based on the idea that if you take an ecological perspective, that is different than taking an individual perspective on life. So what I tell my students is that this is the difference between taking an ego perspective on life and taking an eco perspective. So if you're looking at the world through an ego perspective, it's all about me, right? It's about how can I be on top? How can I be better than everybody else? How can I win? How can I succeed? And traditionally, in our heteronormative and capitalistic society, when we look at a sort of an ego perspective, we tend to look at men, particularly white men, being above everybody else, right? And then we see people as above the environment, and we have a real hierarchical way of thinking about things. When we look at life through an eco perspective, instead of looking at it in terms of a hierarchical perspective, we look at it about how we are all interconnected, how we are all intertwined and intermeshed. And the idea that the individual is, of course, important. You are important in the eco-you, but that you are also part of a larger environment that involves other creatures, the environment, and all the other things that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. So the eco-you perspective recognizes that the self is really embedded, enmeshed in this ever-evolving, interconnected web of the world. So, you know, that line that no man is an island, well, no woman is either, and no one is. And so the eco perspective, the eco-you perspective, and the human ecological perspective really kind of looks at the interdependence and the interconnection of all of us. And, by the way, no time has that interconnection been more sort of brought out into the forefront than in this current pandemic, because our actions as individuals affect others. The things we, in fact, cannot protect ourselves with masks. All we can do is wear a mask so that we protect others, and then others would then have to wear the mask to protect us. So, this whole idea of interconnection and the web of human life is really coming to the forefront as we deal with a virus. But when we think about purpose, I like to think about purpose from this same human ecological perspective. But the first thing that I always want to do with people when I talk about purpose is to get a good working definition, because purpose tends to be one of those words that we throw around, that we can maybe think about at 3 in the morning, or we worry about in those quiet moments. But if I asked you to define purpose, for a lot of people, it's kind of a tricky word to define. So one way to define it is through one of my favorite sort of parables of a traveler who came across 3 men working. And he asked the first one, "What are you doing?" The first man said, "I'm putting one brick on top of the other." And that was true. Then he asked the second one, "What are you doing?" The man said, "I'm building a wall." And that was also true. Then the third one said, "I'm building a cathedral." That was true as well. Now, all 3 men were doing the same thing, but the first man had a job, the second man had a career, and the third man had a calling, a purpose. And that third person, that third man, what he could see was the why behind what he was doing. And that is this idea of purpose. Now, in our lives, we are all building cathedrals, not in a religious sense necessarily, but in the idea of trying to work for something greater. And yet we are all laying one brick on top of the other. And certainly those bricks can feel incredibly heavy. And putting one brick on top of the other in our day-to-day lives is often not glamorous work. But if we understand the why behind what we are doing, the purpose behind what we are doing, then we can see the bigger picture. So I define purpose as the sort of the why behind what you do. Not necessarily the singular aim of your life, but as the place where when you take what you value most and you combine your skills, the thing that you're good at, and then you think about who you want to positively impact, then you kind of get toward what your purpose is. So asking yourself that question, how can I use my gifts in keeping with my values to make a positive impact on the lives of others? And that's what I call living with a purpose mindset. Now, there is lots of research out there that says that when you ask these questions of purpose, when you understand and have a why behind what you do, you tend to live a happier life. And the reason why that is because when you have a sense of purpose, you have a sense of what academics call agency, which it means like you tend to feel like you can actually accomplish the goals that you've set out to accomplish in your life. And if you know why you're doing what you're doing, and you have a sense that you can actually do it and that you are doing it in your life, that tends to make you more satisfied with your life. So having a sense of purpose is linked to all sorts of positive health outcomes, everything from better sleep to fewer heart attacks to lower risk of premature death. It's linked to preventative health measures. You are more likely to do things to take care of yourself if you have the why behind the reason why you're living. You have lower levels of pro-inflammatory gene expression. You are more likely to get flu shots and mammograms. And so there are all these positive things that purpose can do for us, according to the research. Interestingly enough, purpose also is linked with higher salaries. People who have a sense of purpose tend to earn more than people who say that they don't understand the why behind what they are doing. So there's all sorts of really cool research about why purpose matters. Now, when I say this to my students, they sort of put their head in their hands and they say, that sounds wonderful, but it really does sound like a lot of work, this whole purpose thing. And I would like to encourage everyone that yes, you can strengthen your sense of purpose. There are things that you can do, but my bet is that for the most part, especially now during all these times of uncertainty, my bet is that you're already doing a lot of them. And it's more about recognizing the things that you are actually doing and how those are pieces of the puzzle, how those are bricks being laid one on top of the other toward living your larger purpose, toward building that cathedral. And so really, oftentimes, it is simply a matter of awareness of the things you are already doing and how they are connected with your values to make the light bulb go off and say, yes, I am already living purposefully, which then gives you all these benefits because now you are more in tune with the efforts in your life. So I'd like to encourage all of you to do a little exercise with me. And again, when I do this with my college students, they will look at me blankly until I say, no, really, get out a pencil and paper or do this on your computer if you like. I really encourage you to try this exercise with me. It's a fairly simple exercise and there will be a good payoff at the end if you play along. And if you don't have a pencil and paper now, you can rewatch this later with a pencil and paper and you can try the exercise then. But here I'm going to ask you a series of questions and I'm going to give you some hints and possible answers along the way. So the first question that I'm going to ask is actually the hardest. I try to begin with the hardest when you're the freshest and have the most energy. Tell me and write down for yourselves the 3 core values that really guide your life. Now, this is a very challenging question. I have put up a list of values, and this list comes from a man named Professor Schwartz. He did a universal values list. He surveyed people all over the world to find out what values were kind of the short list of values that were out there that most people identified with. But you may be like me and you look at this list and you say, gosh, these all sound great. How do I choose 3? Or you might look at this list and say, well, none of them work for me. I want to write my own. All of those answers are fine. You can write your own if you'd like. The one thing that I will tell you, though, is that happiness is not a value. Happiness is the outcome of living your values. So choose 3 core values that you want to live by. Now, by the way, in a time of uncertainty, no need to choose your 3 core values for the rest of your life. How about choose 3 core values for tomorrow? 3 core values that you would like to embrace tomorrow or today for the rest of the day in your life. All right, so choose 3 core values and write those 3 down. After you have 3 core values, I encourage you to list 3 strengths or gifts that you feel like you bring to the world. Now, I like to think of these as want to skills rather than can do skills. So there are plenty of things that I can do. I can clean up the kitchen and load the dishwasher like a champ, but I am not going to list that in terms of the key strengths that I want to use day in and day out in my life. So think about 3 key gifts, 3 strengths that you want to do, that you want to engage in. You can use this list or you can write down 3 of your own, but write down 3 of those as well. Then I'd like you to think about 3 groups or individuals or causes or communities that you want to make a positive impact on. Because one of the things about purpose is that by its nature, it is pro-social, meaning that purpose is not about making yourself happy, but really about giving of your gifts in keeping with your values to make the world a better place for others as well. So purpose is pro-social, meaning it's about helping other people. And so if you think about the 3 groups or types of people that you'd like to help, you write those down as well. Now, back in the day when I used to do this exercise, I would usually stop there. But now we are in a really uncertain time. And so many of us, me included, have all sorts of fears and anxieties. Right? And so I think it is incredibly important to recognize the fears and anxieties that hold us back from living purposefully. Again, this does not have to be a purpose statement for the rest of your life. Think about the fears and anxieties that are impacting you right now, that may be holding you back right now. I put up a list, but quite frankly, most people don't need a list because our fears and anxieties are so front and center in our lives that we know what they are. Nobody has to see this other than you, but what are the fears and anxieties that are holding you back? Sometimes I think about these fears and anxieties with an exercise from acceptance and commitment therapy that I really like. In the exercise from acceptance and commitment therapy, the way it goes is that you list your fears and anxieties, and then you imagine them as monsters. And you think of yourself as you're driving the bus toward your future. You're driving your bus of life, the journey of life. You're driving along the road, and then all of a sudden, all these monsters jump out at you. They're everywhere. They're in front of you. They're behind you. They're to the left. They're to the right. They're on top of you. What do? You can't move forward. You can't go and conquer your goals and your dreams. No, because there are these monsters that are in your way. You can't go backwards. There are monsters. What do you do? And so the exercise from acceptance and commitment therapy poses this question about our fears and anxieties. And in these times of uncertainty, often that's sort of what it feels like. We almost feel paralyzed by our fears and anxieties. So what do you do? Well, the advice from this brand of therapy is that you put that bus in park, you open the door, and you say, "Hello, monsters, get on the bus." You look at each of the monsters by name. "Hi, fear of failure. Good to see you." "Hi, fear that I'm going to be ridiculed if I actually try this new thing. Nice to see you too. Come on, get on the bus." You look at all your fears and anxieties. You name them all, and you bring them onto the bus, and then you close the door of the bus, and guess what? There are no monsters in front of you. You can keep going, and you can drive forward on the journey of your life. Now, I don't want to make this sound particularly easy because it's certainly not. It's therapeutically very difficult. Those monsters will get up and try to take the wheel, this is a challenging exercise. However, the idea is that acknowledging the fears and anxieties, and naming them and saying that, you know what, we're going to go forward anyway, is a big part of the journey to lead a purposeful life, especially in times of uncertainty. So take a moment and name those fears and anxieties and see whether you can engage in this exercise from acceptance and commitment therapy by saying to yourself, I accept my fears and anxieties about whatever it is. And the final question that I will ask, and this is a big one, which is, what are purpose-based commitments that you can make right now? Now, if you were making this for the rest of your life, this would be a really, really scary big one. But what are 3 purpose-based commitments you can make for tomorrow? What are 3 things you can do tomorrow or for the rest of the day today that would help you live in keeping with your values to make a positive impact on the lives of other people, that would use your gifts and your strengths? What are 3 things that you can do that would feel good to you in the next day? Write 3 of those things down. They don't have to be big. In fact, as you'll see from my example in a minute, they can be quite small. Think about 3 concrete things and what can you do to live purposefully tomorrow. So this is one of my favorite images. This is this fish jumping from a small tank to a larger tank. And I have loved this image for a very long time, mostly because I anthropomorphize this fish and I really feel like I relate to this fish. I don't know if any of you feel like you relate to this fish, but I can imagine this fish saying, I gotta make the jump, I gotta do it, but oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna make it, am I gonna make it? Now this fish really, really, really wants to get to the bigger, better tank, right? Maybe the water is boiling. Maybe the fish is pushed by pain. Maybe there is something wrong with the water in that tank. Maybe the fish is pulled by possibility. It's a bigger, more exciting tank out there that the fish wants to do. But whatever the fish thinks, the fish is taking a leap, is taking a chance, is putting itself out there as it is making the leap. And I, for one, have been this fish in my life. I have made many changes, and I know the terror of hanging out there right in midair. And my bet is that you do too. And whenever you are in this position of uncertainty, of making a change in your life, it brings up all sorts of emotions. That's okay. In fact, that's good. That's what change does. But the reason why the fish is making this leap is because it's trying to go for something bigger, something better. And we all are trying to go for that too in our lives. And so I wanted to share with you my version of a pandemic purpose statement, my pandemic purpose statement for today. And so what I did was I took my values, my gifts, and who I wanted to impact. I listed my fears and anxieties, and then I thought about what my purpose-based commitments could be. So I said, because I value these things, I will use my gifts for translating research, for making connections, for organization to positively impact the lives of my children, my students, and the broader public. I accept my fears and anxieties. These are real, about not being perfect enough or helpful enough, fear of failure, all these things. And still today, make conscious purpose-based commitments to have a fun baked potato bar with my family. Remember, I told you that like these do not have to be very big, but that's really in keeping with my values. That's what I did. My kids love baked potato bar. It's a fun way to have a big family dinner. That's in keeping with my values. We wanted to go for a bike ride. That's part of my values. And I wanted to check in with my students and see how things are going. So these pandemic purpose statements can be daily, they can be small, but they are also really wonderful ways to help you take the big and make it practical in your everyday life. So if this is something that you might want to try, I recommend that you try it. So all you do is you list your core values. Because I value, I will use my gifts for, and then you list the things that you're good at, to positively impact the lives of, and then who you want to positively impact. And you're going to say, yeah, I accept my anxieties and my fears about all sorts of things, and still today make purpose-based commitments to fill in the blank. Now, you can do this on your own. You can do this with your family. Sometimes my kids roll their eyes, but I try to do this with the family, and try to get all of us to do it together. And you can do this as a kind of organizing principle to make sure that you are using your gifts in keeping with your values to do the things that matter most to you on a day-to-day basis, even in times of uncertainty. Now, one of the things that has been very instructive for me is that there's no way to make changes in your life unless you know exactly what you're doing right now. And so often we try to add something to our lives without realizing that we're already pretty booked as it is. So I recommend that if you're interested in making a big change in your life, it's really a good idea to do a time diary and see how you spend your time right now. There's a wonderful book written by one of my colleagues and friends named Laura Vanderkam. The book is called 168 Hours, You Have More Time Than You Think. And off of her website, she also has these free time diary pages. And it's a little bit tedious because you kind of track your time in 15-minute increments for the span of a week. But when you do it, you can actually really see where your time goes. And once you see where your time goes, then you see what free time you might have available to do something else. Or you can say, listen, because I want to do this, because I value, let's say, physical fitness, I'm going to watch a little bit less TV. I'm going to get a little bit less sleep. I'm going to make some time to work out and do this because this is important to me. But you can't make the change. You can't add something until you think about what you're going to subtract in your life, because you're always doing something. So the first thing to do is to do this purpose statement and to figure out what matters most, why it matters to you, and how you want to make it happen. The second thing is to do a time diary to see how you can pull this out in your life and where you can make time to do it. And then the third thing, especially in times of uncertainty, is to be kind to yourself. There are all sorts of meditation apps out there. There are all sorts of therapeutic practices. It doesn't matter whether it's prayer or meditation, or even just a quiet walk every day, turning off your screen, reading a good book. I am a big fan myself of cognitively based compassion training, anything to be kind to yourself, compassionate to yourself and others, especially in a time of emotional tumult. That's really important on the path to purpose. So I want to end with a quote that I love and I think is very telling for our times right now. It's from Catherine McKenna, and what she writes is, "Now every time I witness a strong person, I want to know, what dark did you conquer in your story? Mountains do not rise without earthquakes." We have many earthquakes in our lives. Now, in the past, we have all withstood earthquakes. And the idea that mountains can rise out of earthquakes, that opportunity and good things and growth can come out of times of difficulty, that's, I feel, a very, very powerful message. But because I'm me and I think about these things a lot, I wondered whether we could maybe edit this just a tad. So I said, instead of what dark did you conquer in your story, what dark did you accept in your story? Maybe what dark could you integrate into your story? What dark did you embrace in your story? Because those fears and anxieties, those don't have to be demons we run away from. These tough times can be really powerful teachers. And the idea of thinking about purpose, especially in a time of uncertainty, can be incredibly powerful. So I encourage everybody to embrace their pandemic purpose in a time of uncertainty. And to do this, I have created all sorts of these free worksheets. So if you would like to download the worksheet, you too can do this with your friends and your family. You can do a pandemic purpose worksheet. I fear that as we head into the next wave of things, there will be time to do this. So I encourage all of you to sort of really think about what matters most to you, why it matters, and how to make it happen, both in the good times and in the tough times as well. And with that, I will take questions if there are any.
If you do have a question for Christine, you can just pull up your chat box and type it right in there, and she'll read
That's
through
right.
those and give an answer for you.
That's right. I've got it up there. I've got it up there. If you're anything like my kids, you know, then there's this there, they have questions, but you know, the idea of actually asking them can be somewhat scary. But hopefully, a chat box is oh, good. Here we go. Can you talk more about compassion-based training? Absolutely. So CBCT, cognitively based compassion training, is something that a colleague of mine named Geshe Lipsong Tenzin Negi developed, and is actually something that's being taught in K through 12 schools now all over the world. It's the idea of starting from a love of self and a compassion for yourself and a compassion for others. And it is it's not religious in its application now, but it does come from Buddhist origins, and there's a version of it that I really that I have sort of embraced myself, and it is a meditation in which you as you breathe in, you think about all of the difficulties that you and other people are experiencing. So for example, as you breathe in, you think about all the anxiety around health issues and safety and well-being right now. And you think that you think about how you feel it, but you know what? You're not the only one that feels it. There are hundreds, thousands, millions of people that are out there that feel it. So as you breathe in, you realize, you really feel the anxiety and the feelings that you and so many other people are feeling. And then as you breathe out the sensation of what you would like to feel yourself and the feeling that you would like to offer to the world. So is it calm? Is it resilience? What is the feeling that you want to feel for yourself and that you want others to feel as well? And so the idea of feeling the intense feelings and then offering a good feeling out, not only for yourself but for others. This is a way of having compassion for yourself in a time of anxiety, and then also sharing that with the wider world. So let's see, we have a question. You're really talking about a personal mission statement that helps you make decisions of what to say yes and no to. Absolutely. So the idea of purpose and mission is, academics will sort of piece it apart about, you know, the various differences in those two words. My sort of quick version of the difference is that your mission or your vision is a broader is the broader thing, and your personal purpose is your piece of it, is the thing that you feel like you are called to do as part of the larger mission. So if the larger mission is world peace, then your personal piece of it, your personal segment of that, might be working with a particular community organization toward more dialogue and understanding between groups of people, right? And so that can be part of your personal mission statement, your sort of purpose statement as part of the larger mission. When I think about it in terms of a pandemic purpose statement, I think about it in terms of how can you apply what matters most to you, your core values, and how can you use the things that you are already good at to make a positive difference in the lives of others. And the reason why I break it down like I do is to kind of create a Mad Lib statement out of it. For any of you who have done long car rides with your family, the idea of Mad Libs, you know, you sort of answer a bunch of questions and then you put it all together. There's lots of research that says that if you take a big daunting concept and you break it down into smaller pieces, then it becomes more manageable and actually can become kind of a fun exploration of possibilities rather than this daunting, terrible thing. Because if I had asked you at the beginning of this talk, now I'd like to have all of you write down your personal purpose statement. My bet is that you'd be staring at a blank page, because I certainly would be. I mean, that's like a big, that's a big, heavy ask to do. But breaking it down into small bits at least gives you a draft, something to react against. Now, you might write out that personal purpose statement and say, well, that's obvious, or that's not helpful. And then go back and think about how you can make it more specific to matter to you in this particular time. You might write down that personal purpose statement and say, wow, that sounds wonderful, except that I'm not living this right now in my life. I'm not spending my resources of time, of money, of talent in keeping with these values. And in that case, you have to make a decision. Is that actually your purpose? Or is that what you think your purpose should be? Or do you need to change your actions? Do you need to change the way you're living your life to live more in keeping with your values? Either way, this idea of breaking this big daunting topic down into something that is more manageable and user-friendly and appropriate for this moment. My hope is that it's a way to demystify a big concept and help people use it in their everyday lives. Any other questions? If not, we can wrap it up there. And the other thing is that I am always available. So I'm at the University of Wisconsin at Madison. You can find me on the UW page, and you can feel free to reach out to me. And I'm around and doing online classes during this crazy time. So feel free to reach out if you have further questions or want further resources. Thank you guys so much.